everybody. How's it going? Well, that's good. Welcome to the PHLY Flyers Podcast, presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, and presented by your local Ford store. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity mobile studio. It is a mobile show today. I am Charlie O'Connor, and with me is the great Steve Jaco. Steve, thanks so much for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Charlie. The month of Steve, the summer of Steve here is almost done. I've been on half the podcast this month, it feels like, for PHLY, but it's been fun. It's been a great run. We've been talking whatever the heck kind of hockey content we can, and I'm refreshed and I'm ready to go. I finally got a beach day in yesterday. Nice. Perfect week. This is like the best weather week of the entire summer. So I can't think of a better time to talk about the most negative possible assessments of the Flyers than on a perfect sunshiny summer day.
Honestly, you're not wrong. And want to explain the basis behind this particular day of the show. Yesterday, we had Anthony Gargano on the show. If you have not watched, give that a watch. It was a lot of fun to have Cuz on the show. But yesterday, the focus was on the reasons for optimism. You know, why this all could work out. Why I think a lot of people are feeling good about where the Flyers stand right now. Today is the flip side of that. Today is us talking through the reasons why people are pessimistic and the reasons why this all might not work. And in 5 years, the Flyers have to clean house because this rebuild completely failed. But before we get into that, I do want to tell you a few things about the goings on here at PHLY. First, our DieHard sale is still going on for a limited time. $36 year membership to become a diehard. Read all of our stuff. Flyer season coming up soon. It's a great time to get on board. And we have new launches for football season, new shirts, new merch. Got that Bird Gang Football Club shirt. We got a few others. If you sign up to be a diehard, you get the shirt for free. If you're already a diehard, check out allphly.com and buy one of those shirts on the website. They're really cool.
That's a great Bird Gang shirt. I like that.
And honestly, it's a really nice shirt. Yeah. Our merch people do a good job with design. They do a very good job. Next up is a more Flyers specific announcement. We are changing our show time starting next Tuesday. During the summer, we've been at 12 p.m. It's a great time for the off season because there's nothing going on. Sure, let's get the show done early, have people be able to watch it at lunch. During the season, practices happen. And it's much easier for me to get on a show later as opposed to rushing to the studio at 12 p.m. So we're moving to 4 p.m. starting Tuesday, September 2nd. We will not be having a show on Labor Day, obviously, but first day back, it is a 4 p.m. show, and that will hold through the rest of the season and maybe longer. We'll see what happens next summer, but that's a long ways away. And
long ways, but we're talking about practice, away. Charlie. We're talking about practice.
Not a game. Not a game. Practice. Finally, we have our road trip to Anaheim with Philly Sports Trips, plural, March 17th through the 22nd. So it's also a ways away. That's when we're actually going to be coming up on the off season again. Hopefully it'll be after a long Flyers playoff run. That would be fantastic. But want to let everyone know that we are going to Anaheim for the games against the Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Ducks. Obviously, the Cutter Gauthier game, it's a pretty big sell. You get to express your feelings to Cutter in person. Let's put it that way, if you would like. And then they play in San Jose that Saturday, and I believe we're going to be having a watch party. John LeClaire will be on the trip with us with Philly Sports Trips. We did the Philly Sports Trips trip to Montreal at the end of last season. It was fantastic. They do such a good job. I am really pumped for this one. So if you're interested, check that out on allphly.com. It's on our events tab. Sign up. Obviously, it's not, we're not talking about something that is cheap, but it's absolutely worth it given what you get, given the tickets you get, given the fact that it's a trip entirely planned out by the great people at Philly Sports Trips.
It's such a cool trip, and honestly, you want to be in California in March. I mean, come on. The California weather is legendary, and March is a great time to be there. It's not too hot at that point, so go enjoy some perfect weather. Go check out the West Coast, and go hang out with just two of the coolest people with Bill and Charlie. Come on.
Exactly. It'll be a really good time, and we will be talking about this for months. So we'd love to have as many regular listeners and viewers as possible on that trip. It's going to be a really good time. Now we're back to the show. And as I noted, this is going to be the pessimism show as a the optimism show that was yesterday with Anthony Gargano. But before we get into the pessimism, I do actually want to start out with a little optimism because Corey Pronman over at The Athletic has been going through his pipeline rankings where, and to be clear, this is not a prospect ranking. What he does is basically anyone, even if you're an NHL player, if you are, I believe that the cutoff is 24, I think. If you're 24 or younger, you count. So it's not penalizing teams for like promoting a player early. Like, yes, Matvei Michkov is no longer a prospect. That said, if he was still playing over in Russia, he would be, and it's really no change in his talent level. It's just that, well, he's in the NHL. So Corey evaluates everybody, like Connor Bedard's on this list, Mac Lascelles-Brini for San Jose. They all get counted as if they're prospects, but obviously there's more certainty because they're already NHL players. The Flyers last year in Corey's ranking were 13th. This year, Corey released his Flyers article, and they were up to 7th. So the Flyers did have some graduations from the list from last year, namely Jamie Drysdale, but a lot of additions as a result of their big haul at the 2025 NHL draft. We knew that was going to happen. They had a ton of picks in the early rounds, but yeah, that really gave this system a major boost. And you'll see that as well when we release our top 20 prospects list next week at allphly.com. I know Broad Street Hockey Steve has been doing the 25 under 25. That's always the classic BSH. I think it was like an SB Nation thing, and BSH may be one of the only standard bearers of the format.
For sure.
Like really does hockey or much of anything, it appears.
We've kept it going strong. I'm so proud of our crew over there for just, keep on keeping on with all the BSH traditions and, whatever might have happened, we keep going with that hockey content. And the 25 under 25 is one of the best things we put out every year. So go check that out over on broadstreethockey.com. It is running. I think we just got out of the 20s. So go check that out. I mean, the whole gang is doing a fantastic job with that.
Yes. They always do great work. Obviously, we love our friends at BSH, including Steve, who's on the show. But the big takeaway presented by Xfinity of this list from Corey Pronman is that the Flyers are a deep prospect pool. Again, Corey's usually pretty tough on in his rankings in terms of like evaluating players as viable prospects. Like there are a lot of guys that I consider to be quality prospects on the Philadelphia Flyers, Carter Amico, Denver Barkey, Samu Tuamalo, Spencer Gill, that he ranks in the has a chance to play bucket. They don't get formally ranked on the list. They're just like, yeah, they could make it. But even given the fact that Corey tends to be harder on prospects, I would say, than the average, certainly more than the average fan. He ranks 13 players as basically projected to be NHLers in the Flyer system. Obviously, number one is Matvei Michkov. That makes sense. But there's a lot of names here of players that he really believes are going to be NHLers, and I think that's exciting.
That's really exciting. And, number one, I've been hard on Corey in the past and Corey should be tough on the prospects because this is all Corey does. Corey is a prospect guy, but I got to give it up for him supporting Michkov and recognizing that talent in a way that a lot of the national guys seem to have not really caught on yet. I think he's gotten a lot more respect after that rookie season, but there's still some guys who really just don't recognize just how special Matvei Michkov is. Looking at some of the other names on this list, I love that Zavragin is also getting some respect on here because I've seen him not even get ranked on some of these goalie lists recently. Yeah. And that's annoying because it also feels like we might potentially have something special in him there. I'm really intrigued by Nesbitt at number 3 because Nesbitt is been the biggest point of contention this offseason for Flyers fans by a mile.
Yeah, it is. And I think we know from actually, because Corey came on the show in the weeks leading up to the draft, and Bill asked him about Jack Nesbitt, not knowing that the Flyers are obviously going to trade up for him. But we were discussing Jack Nesbitt on a show. I think he had been mocked to the Flyers in a mock draft. So we discussed him the day before. And Bill asked Corey about him, and Corey made it clear that he is very bullish on Nesbitt. He thinks very highly of him as a prospect, and this shows. I mean, he's over guys like Bonk, guys like Luchenko. You know, these are guys that I think most people would put above Nesbitt on their prospect list. I can tell you that they're both above Nesbitt on our coming prospect list, the one that myself and Alex Appleyard put together. But this is just showing that, like, Corey is putting his money where his mouth is. You know, he's basically like, no, I think Nesbitt's a legit prospect. I think he can be potentially a 2C at the NHL level. And he's not that concerned about the skating, at least to the point where he's going to ding him so much that he would be a, 8 to 12 ranking guy as opposed to number 3. So that is exciting that, Corey remains high on Nesbitt. Zvragin, though, I agree. That is the truly exciting one, because you're right. Looking at other lists, elite prospects, Scott Wheeler, a lot of people in the public sphere don't seem to be sold on Zvragin. Now, part of that might just be they don't get to watch him a lot. Obviously, the Russians are not an international play right now, so you don't get the benefit of seeing him in things like the World Championships and World Juniors, things like that. But also, it just seems like the public people, aside from Corey, just aren't yet sold on him and his NHL potential. Corey very much is. Corey sees Zvragin as one of the better goalie prospects in hockey, which I think lines up with the way we see him. Look, I don't know if he's going to pan. I don't know if he's going to be a star or whatever, but I do believe that what he's done at such a young age in the KHL is extremely noteworthy, and it's rare. And he should probably get more respect from public scouting prospect evaluators than he does, just given the fact that he was 19 years old last year playing for one of the big money teams in the KHL and doing a pretty good job.
And I think when we're thinking about the current Flyers needs, right, and what the problem spots are, goaltender's number one with a bullet. You also think about the centers, but goaltender's definitely up there. And we're going into a season right now where we're going to have Sam Ersson and Dan Vladar, who I don't think anybody feels good about this. Like, I think there's mild optimism that we'll see the best of these two guys, but I don't think anybody feels good. And we don't see, I guess, a foreseeable future option. We don't see like a surefire starter right now. So Zvragin's really important on how optimistic you are about this team, because if this team is going to be a really good NHL team in, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, they're going to have a great goaltender back there. And we're really pinning a lot of hopes on this guy that he could be the guy. I mean, Carson Bjarnason's around too, and I think I want to see some good stuff from him, but I think everybody sees the ceiling for Zvragin way higher than Carson Bjarnason's.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's just that, like, Bjarnason, obviously a legitimate goalie prospect. He's got size, he's got athleticism. He performed quite well last year, especially in the WHL for Brandon. But he's more of he's a good junior goalie prospect. Whereas Zvragin is doing things in the KHL that you just don't see very often. You see guys be good in the WHL quite often in goal. Like, he's not an abnormal goalie prospect. That doesn't mean he's not going to be a stud. He might develop into a great goalie. It's very possible. It just seems like Zvragin, so far since he's been drafted, is doing more impressive things than Bjarnason. Like, it's not even like Bjarnason is having like a Carter Hart-esque junior career. He was good. It's good goalie, good goalie in the dub. But like, Carter Hart was the best goalie in junior hockey. I don't think anyone would say that Carson Bjarnason was the best goalie in junior hockey, as opposed to Zvragin, who you could make a case is like was the best under 20 goalie in Russia, maybe even all of Europe last year. Like, you could make a case for that.
You really could, and that's exciting. Like, I like to see somebody recognize that, because it's one of those things where we're talking about it, and it makes you suspicious when you don't hear other people talking about it. It's like, am I in denial? Am I just seeing things wrong? And it's like the same thing when people don't recognize Michkov. It's the same thing when, the Flyers see something in Nesbitt, but nobody else does. So it's vindicating in a lot of ways to see these guys up there. The one other guy I wanted to talk about on Corey's list here is Oliver Bonk at 4. And I think Bonk's going to come up a couple times today, but Bonk is one of those guys that there's not a lot in the defensive pipeline. Part of that is the fact that the defense is young for the most part anyway. Like the guys who are
Sure.
starting are mostly like mid-20s at this point. So we don't have like a lot of like old guys really in there, but they don't have a lot of young guys in the prospect pool either. So Bonk's the one guy who's almost NHL ready, who there was a year of excitement. Like there was the initial, when they drafted him, like, I don't know. And then he really rose up the rankings, and then he kind of middled out a little bit this past season. So it's encouraging to see him at number 4 here. And I would love to see a strong showing from him this season, and maybe push to be in the Flyers lineup at some point in the near future.
Yeah, I think, Bonk is maybe a little polarizing, and we'll get into this in a few minutes, just because of who could have been taken other than Bonk at that spot. There's still people who look, and every time they see the 2 words Oliver Bonk, the first thing they think of is Gabe Perreault, like, is that's who they wanted. But I think Bonk is one of those guys where he maybe doesn't have the ceiling, the super exciting ceiling. Like, you watch him, it's kind of tough to envision him as a, number 1 defenseman who is the backbone of your blue line. But it's also very easy to envision him as a guy who is taking top 4 minutes and doing well in them, because he is such a well-rounded defenseman who doesn't have much in the way of glaring weaknesses. Now, I agree with you. It would be very exciting if he makes a push, to be on the Flyers roster, number 1 at camp. It would be cool if he sticks around for a long time, before he ultimately, because I expect at some point he will be sent to the Phantoms. This is his first per year. I'm not expecting him to make the team out of camp, but I would like to see him take a run at it. I would like to see him stay in the conversation, and then hopefully play well enough during the year where when a guy goes down to injury or whatever, he's a plausible option for a call-up. Now, whether they pick him or not, I don't know, but I'd like to see him play well enough where it's not out of the realm of possibility to think that he could be the choice.
I'm thinking a lot about like Luchenko last year, where Luchenko kind of came out of nowhere after, again, a guy who was a very controversial draft pick for where he was selected, and had an impressive camp and had a cup of coffee with the Flyers to start the season. And he put himself on the radar for people. He really came up in conversation after that, where people weren't thinking about him at all before that. So I would love to see Bonk, who has been talked about to this point, but it just feels like a good time for him to really just establish himself. And yeah, he should play with the Phantoms this year. He should get that professional experience, but I don't know what the heck the situation with Rasmus Ristolainen is at this point. I think at some point I would love to move on from Rasmus Ristolainen and be able to put a guy like Bonk in the lineup.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Ristolainen isn't young. He's not old, but he's not young. It's hard to see Ristolainen being part of the next great Flyers team 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And they have guys on the right side coming up. Like, if anything, their biggest weak point in their pipeline is left shot defenseman. Especially now that Emil Andre is no longer a prospect. He was Calder eligible last year. But, like, they do have guys like Oliver Bonk, obviously, who's a right shot. They just drafted Carter Amico. Like, they have some guys, and Amico is very much, looks the part of a Ristolainen replacement, given his size and his nastiness. But they do have some they have Spencer Gill, who's a righty shot. Like, they have some righty shot defensemen in the pipeline that look like they could be NHL players. It's just the left side, Hunter McDonald, like they really don't have much. They don't have much in the way of quality left shot defensemen. And luckily they're pretty deep on the left side at the NHL level right now. You've got Sanheim, who plays the right, but he's a lefty. You got Cam York. You have Emil Andre. You have Nick Seeler for now. Like, they have guys, but that is clearly the weak point of the pipeline. And there's a reason why, looking at this list, there's not a single left shot defenseman on the list. There's only, looking at it, it's literally just Bonk in terms of defensemen on this list, period.
I think that's still the number one thing I was surprised about in this most recent draft, is they didn't try to establish get more defensemen for the pipeline. They went with what, 2 defensemen ultimately? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. Well, they picked Amico in the second, and then they picked Vluzwick in, I think, the 5th. But yeah, I think those were the only 2 defensemen. Everybody else was forwards.
Yeah, they really concentrated on getting that size in there and getting a lot of center depth wherever they could. And look, those were things to definitely concentrate on. You look at a lot of their prospects and a lot of their young guys, there's a lot of small guys. Matvei Michkov's not the biggest guy. Bobby Brink, obviously, is not a very large guy. So getting that size was important. But yeah, it's you're wondering, looking at this list, when are they going to get some defensemen to kind of, stock the cupboard a little bit with that. So hopefully this coming draft they do it. In the meantime, it's definitely something. It's not a huge concern if you look at the NHL level, but something they have to start thinking about.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that does it for the optimism. After this commercial break, we will break out the pessimism. So going to start out talking about our friends at Xfinity, sponsors of the Big Takeaway, sponsors of our studio. So the other day I'm over at a friend's place. He's pumped to get ready to watch hockey. Hockey season's right around the corner, but his setup is a total mess. Lagging, buffering, switching between apps to find games. He claimed he was a big fan, but I feel like I've been fan fished. See, if you call yourself a hockey fan, you got to have Xfinity. It's the ultimate sports destination. I can find the best games and my favorite teams all in one place. And the way I watch, next level. It's the perfect fan flex. I've got all the action right in my living room. Plus, Xfinity's best picture and sound with enhanced 4K. So clear, it feels like I'm in the arena. Sometimes I got 4 games going at once because why not? On top of that, I get real-time notifications and live stats right on my TV. It's the best seat in the house every time. Next game day, make sure that big fan isn't a big fail. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Restrictions apply. Multi-view requires Xfinity 4K capable TV box. And next up, I want to tell you about our friends at Ford, specifically the Ford Explorer. It is America's all-time best-selling SUV, a legacy of family trust and performance. It offers 3-row seating for up to 7 passengers, great for families and road trips. There's available rear-wheel drive or intelligent 4-wheel drive for better tracking control. Comes with a choice of 3 powertrains, including a hybrid for better fuel economy. 2.3-liter EcoBoost i4 engine delivers power with efficiency, up to 300 horsepower. There's an available 3.0-liter EcoBoost V6, which kicks it up to 400 horsepower in the ST trim. And then the hybrid model offers up to 500 miles of driving range, a great balance of power and economy. The Ford Explorer is packed with the Ford Copilot 360, a suite of advanced driver assist features. There's a 12.3 digital instrument cluster, which adds a high-tech feel to the driving experience. And there's available Sync 4 infotainment system with a large touch screen and voice command. They got the terrain management system, which lets you select drive modes like snow, sand, and tow haul. It offers up to 87.8 cubic feet of cargo space with the rear seats folded down. Rear seat passengers get available captain's chairs for extra comfort and accessibility, and it's standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto across all trims. The Ford Explorer is built for families, but ready for adventure, a true do-it-all SUV. For more information, visit your local Ford store. Steve, welcome back. Let's get pessimistic.
Let's get sad, baby. Let's do it.
Time to get sad. Love to be sad. So the point of this, the point of this is to go through the reasons for skepticism regarding the Flyers' plan, and also just the ways that it could flop, the ways that it could just not work out. Where 5-10 years down the road, we're talking about the Briere era, the same way we talk about the Ron Hextall era and the Chuck Fletcher era. And I think the big one at the top, the number one reason for skepticism about their plan as they've executed it thus far, is that they lack clear-cut stars at premium positions, especially if we're talking about looking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. They don't have a clear-cut future 1C. They have guys who could, maybe they can rehabilitate Zegras. Maybe Luchenko or Nesbitt breaks out and becomes way better than expected. But they don't have that one guy who you're like, yep, that's the guy you can point to who's going to be the number one center on this team, point per game, impact center. Defense, they don't really have a number one defenseman in the pipeline either. Oliver Bonk's their top defenseman, and most likely he's going to be a good second pair defenseman. Could he be a first pair guy? Sure, that's a plausible outcome. But I don't think anybody looks at him and they're like, oh man, this guy is going to be a 24, 25 a minute a night anchor for your defense. And then in goal, they don't have the goalie yet. Maybe Zavragin's the guy. This is probably the position where they at least have a possibility. That said, Zavragin is still a just turned 20-year-old guy who's yet to see any time in North America, who was a third-round pick, who not everybody in the industry is as high on as we are. So you can't look at him as a, definite. the way that you could look at like an Askarov, like one of the true top goalie prospects that everyone in hockey loves. Their best prospects and honestly best players are wingers. Matvei Michkov, he's a winger. Werner Martone, he's a winger. Travis Konecny, who they got signed forever, he's a winger. Can you build a cup contender without having cornerstone pieces at the three most important positions? That, I think, is probably the biggest cause for concern team building wise.
I guess we're about to find out if you can, because you're right. It is a big question. And I guess the thing is, your optimism is you're going for, can they trade or sign one of these guys? But if you're looking purely at who they have, there is not a 1C. There's not a clear-cut number one defender in the pipeline. The closest you have is Sanheim, and Sanheim's in his prime right now. And if you're looking at 1C, like, you've got Jet Luchenko, who we all like a lot. Like, I don't think there's anybody who actively dislikes him. You can argue about Z Bouillon versus him, and that's something we'll get into. But you can't dislike Luchenko because, like, he plays a solid two-way game. He's obviously got really good hockey sense based on what we've seen so far. But you don't see the potential for a 1C in him at this time. He doesn't have that offensive game to him right now. Can he fly on the ice? Yeah. Dude can skate all day. But I just haven't seen anything offensively out of him that really says to me, like, this is a guy who could be your number 1C. Could it be a 2 or 3? Absolutely. I don't know about 1. Nesbitt, they drafted him in a position where maybe he could grow into that, but based on like a lot of the ceiling stuff you've heard from the draft experts, from the prospect experts, it doesn't really seem like it's there. People seem to think of his ceiling as like maybe a 3C right now. If we're lucky, maybe a 2, but I think it's really, they're going to have to do some top-notch developing if they want him to be a 1. And then if I'm just looking at so the biggest thing is it comes down to Sean Couturier, right? And Sean Couturier, he's 32. He's past his prime. He's just, I love Sean Couturier. One of my favorite guys. Like, he's awesome. The two-way hockey sense, like, you can't beat it. And we've seen him at his top-notch offensive game, and he's had times where he's been a number 1 center. It ain't now. It's just between the injuries, the age. Will he give you very effective, really good hockey nights where he'll play with Travis Konecny and Matvei Michkov and act like a 1C? Sure. But he's not going to be in the conversation for this in like 3-4 years. He absolutely isn't. It's going to have to be somebody in the pipeline. And then if there's one other factor we're talking about with that 1C, we're talking about this most recent draft. And we're talking about Martone over Higgins, which is going to be a debate for years to come. Years to come. And I love Martone. I don't have any anger over that decision. But if James Higgins is a just dynamite center for the Boston Bruins, I think people are going to be real salty about that for years to come, because it's tough to get a number 1C. I think we took it for granted for years because the Flyers were so good at finding center depth and finding effective centers. If we think about the 2010 team, that team had Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, Danny Briere, just ridiculous.
Claude Giroux, like center wing at that point. They had a future 1C and he wasn't even playing center all the time on that team.
It was ridiculous. So it's a big concern, like it does feel like they're going to have to get somebody in the draft. And if this team pushes for a playoff spot this year, or if this team is just like middling, they're not going to end up in the best draft position. I don't think this team could tank out this year. I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't.
That's not the intention, but they could be bad. It's possible.
They could be bad. If the goaltending is, a worst case scenario, they could be real bad. And that would be great for building the prospect timeline, building the prospect pool back up and everything. I mean, it's built up. It's number 7, but you still want to get some more high end talent if you can. And really the best way to do that is to get like a top 3 pick if you can.
Yeah. And that leads us right into the second reason for pessimism. And this is the big one online. If you're on Twitter, you hear this one a lot, and it is they're not tanking. They have made it abundantly clear that they do not believe in the tanking model as a viable way, or at least the way that they want to use to build a contender. They want to make sure that the culture stays strong. They believe that players develop better in a competitive environment. So they're not going to gut the thing and basically build up from scratch. That was never part of their plan. That
No.
said, the negative of that is, and you basically just spoke to it, you're not guaranteed to pick at the top of the draft multiple years in a row. Now, the Flyers have picked fairly high. You know, Matvei Michkov, they got at 7. Porter Martone, they got at 6. They had the pick in the early teens that they traded back to ultimately get Luchenko. So it's not like they're picking in the like 17, 18, 19, 20 range. But they're not picking 1. They're not picking 2. They're not picking 3. They're not putting themselves in position to get the best lottery odds. And this links itself back to that lack of stars at premium positions thing. The top centers, the top defensemen go early. And if you want to guarantee yourself one of those guys, you probably got to be picking, first, second, third, fourth. The Flyers plan makes it very tough, barring lottery luck, for them to pick that high, which makes it tougher to get the stars at the premium positions through the draft. I get why that is a frustration point for people who are just like, they should have tanked for 3-4 years, gotten top 5 picks for 4 straight years, and then started the building process then. I don't think what they're doing is destined to fail, but I do acknowledge that it's easier to get the high-end young players when you're picking in the top 5 every year versus what the Flyers have chosen to do.
The lottery system makes it tough too, because we look at last season, they finished 4th worst, right?
True.
But they end up with the 6th pick. And that's a big tumble in that draft, because there's a big difference between who was available at 6 versus who was available at 4. That said, I love Porter Martone at 6. Like, I think that was a great value pick, just like Michkov, but it's still not a center. Yeah. And if they're going to win, if we just base it off who they have in the system right now, they're really going to have to just count on their wingers being elite and elevating the play of their center. Because you could argue that in Sean Couturier's most effective years with the Flyers, it was really that he was with fantastic wingers that helped him elevate his offensive game. He's playing with Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek, who Claude Giroux, obviously a wizard out on the ice. And Jake Voracek, I think one of the more underrated players of the past, 10, 15 years, because did he score a lot of goals? No, but the guy was a great passer, really good forechecker. He was a really good hockey player for this team. So playing with those two offensively talented guys really helped Sean Couturier raise his game ultimately. I don't think Sean Couturier, he was very good those years, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I think a lot of it was him being an effective player. So I wonder if Jet Luchenko can kind of benefit from something like that, or Jack Nesbitt just clearing some space, letting guys like Michkov, Martone, Forrester, maybe even Tippett, if Tippett gets to that point. Tippett's one of those big question marks for me. Yeah. And TK do their work on the wings, because you do have some really, really talented guys on the outside.
Yeah, the wing is not a problem in this pipeline by any means. Not a problem at the NHL level or in the pipeline. They got a lot of really, really talented wingers. But again, it's easier to draft wingers. Like, it's easier to get a value pick of a winger than it is to get a value pick of a center.
We just saw that. If Martone was a center, Martone goes top 3, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it happens. Sometimes you luck into a Claude Giroux in the 20s. It does happen. Sometimes you luck into a Braden Point in the mid rounds. It does happen. It's just really hard. Whereas you can find value picks at wing, in the second round. You find wingers who turn out to be studs in the second, third round all the time. Every year there's a few in each draft. But it's harder to get those premium position guys unless you're picking at the top of the draft. So I get the people whose primary reason for pessimism is that they disagree with the entire philosophy behind the rebuild, because they view this as basically going half in on a rebuild rather than fully committing to bottoming out and giving yourself the best chance to get the high-end guys at the top of the draft. I get it.
I get it, but it's hard. It's harder, I think, in the NHL than some other sports. Like, if you're in the NFL and you're the worst team, you're going to get the pick corresponding to how bad you were.
Sure.
And it's easier to tank and football, you need a lot of moving parts. Don't get me wrong. Football might even be a better comparison to hockey than some other sports. But if you're in the NBA, for instance, you just need one stud at the top of the draft to change everything around. The Sixers took how many shots to get Joel Embiid? And again, argue whatever you will now, they at least had an MVP player that they got out of that tanking. How many shots did the Oilers take before getting into Draisaitl and, McDavid, right? The Oilers had countless flops at that position, and the number one draft picks. They just kept flopping and flopping and flopping. They had some terrible picks, and they eventually hit. But it took a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And this is, Steve, a great lead-in. Again, you're doing a great job here, bud. The lead-in to the next one. Because this is another thing that I do think is it's incomplete because we don't know how these players are ultimately going to pan out. We're still in the developmental stage of what the Flyers prospects are going to be and what other prospects on other teams are going to be. But I do think one reason why some people are frustrated, and I think it's fair, is the perceived missed opportunities on draft day. Now, no one is criticizing them for Matvei Michkov, slam dunk pick. You get a guy who looks like a potential future superstar at number 7. Good job, Danny. Well done. But there are a number of other picks that Briere and his staff has made that have been controversial at the top of the draft. First one in 2023, they take Michkov at 7. Great. Then they take Oliver Bonk. A lot of people wanted Gabe Perreault. Thus far, Gabe Perreault has continued to put up ridiculous numbers. He moved on to college and was great there. Good chance he makes the Rangers out of camp this year, and then we'll see how good of an NHL player he's going to be. But I would say that on prospect lists, Perreault is usually significantly higher than Bonk. So people point to that as like missed opportunity. You could have gotten a potential star winger. Instead, you got a defenseman whose ceiling is looking like probably second pair. Then
that one's frustrating for sure.
That one, that's tough. So that's number one. Then number 2, the Jet Luchenko instead of Zeev Buium pick. And that's one that people are still angry about. Like there are people who don't like Jet Luchenko through no fault of Jet Luchenko, just because he's not Zeev Buium, because they had the opportunity to get Buium and they passed on him. They trade down, then they take Luchenko, who was viewed as probably like something of a reach at that pick. But it's more that the idea was, okay, well, there's this big tier and the Flyers are going to get one of the guys in that tier. Buium's the guy in that tier that slips to them, and the Flyers are like, nah, we're good. We want the center who probably doesn't have 1C upside. That's one that I think is real tough for a lot of fans to swallow.
That one I keep hearing about from people. Like, people have not let that one go, and people are never going to let that one go, especially because Buium's already played playoff games for the Minnesota Wild at this point. There is a high-end talent there. I have never bought the Flyers line about Buium where they were saying, like, we got too many guys like that already. There's clearly something they didn't like in his game, because I don't think, if you think Zeev Buium is a special player, you're not letting who you already have affect you taking the best possible player. I just think there's something they didn't like about him. I don't know if it was agent related or what, but there was something they didn't like there. And look, this is the ultimate, like, trust the process with Danny Briere question, is Jet Luchenko over Zeev Buium, because I think it's hard to really, like, get too upset over Martone and Hagens, which we'll talk about in a minute. But, like, Martone is a fantastic talent. Like, he is an A+ talent. That's like somebody you get there and you're happy to get. And you can talk about Hagen's size being a factor and all that. Luchenko's ceiling versus Buium's ceiling. Buium's a potential top pair guy. Luchenko, we were just talking about it, second or third pair guy, probably. Between his size and just his lack of offensive upside, it just, you don't really feel like, you feel good about Luchenko if you like him, but you don't feel like, oh my God, this is a franchise changer.
That's fair.
Whereas
That's fair.
Buium could be a franchise changer. He really could be. I hope he isn't, because I'm of the Flyers mindset of, with like Gauthier, you guys like, oh, you're not one of us, screw you, I don't care. But then, like, if you're one of us, it's like when Gritty first was unveiled, right? And the first like 5 seconds, we were like, what is this nonsense? I hate this. And then other people started trashing him. We're like, no, he's ours. You can't make fun of him. We love Gritty. And it's like that kind of where you immediately are like, well, no, Luchenko's my guy. Screw Zeev Buium.
Yeah, and look, I was a big fan of Zeev Buium in the lead up to the draft. I believe I ranked him either 3rd or 4th on my board. I think it was 3rd. I think my ranking was, if I remember correctly, I think it was Celebrini, Demidov, Buium, and then Berkeley Catton. I think I had a 4, if I remember correctly. I think I had Sam Dickinson at 5. But I really like Zeev Buium. So there's a part of me that, like, I want to see him do well because I have nothing against the guy. That said, part of me wants to see him not do well because I am dealing with Flyers fans on a daily basis, and I'd rather not have to deal with them being real angry if Zeev Buium is a Norris contender and Jet Luchenko is like a solid third line center. Like, that would be a bummer for me in terms of my own sanity. Also, it will really hurt the Flyers because you're looking at it and you're like, they would have had an opportunity. Because we just talked about the lack of stars at premium positions in the pipeline. Well, Zeke Booyum's a defenseman. And if he turns out to be number one defenseman, Norris Trophy level guy, that is going to be something that people point to 20 years down the road of like, remember when they skipped over that guy, the guy who, won 2 Norrises and, was one of the best defensemen of his era for Jet Luchenko, a perfectly fine player. Now, I've made the case that the way that Jet Luchenko has to end this talk is to score the game-winning goal in a cup final, the same way that Brandon Graham finally halted the Earl Thomas talk when he made the big play in the Super Bowl to basically clinch it. That might be the only way that Luchenko ends this chatter, unless Booyum's a bust. And I guess it's possible Booyum could be a bust. He wasn't all that great in the postseason for Minnesota. Now, granted, you're throwing him into the deep end there. It was his first real taste of the NHL, and you're having him play playoff games. I think he's going to be really good, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah, but that Brandon Graham comparison's a real good one there because Birds fans were furious because safety was such a position of need for the team, and they were always pretty good at finding defensive line players. And yeah, like that was the time it ended, was when he made just one of the greatest plays in Philadelphia sports history. No big deal right there. And yeah, I think Luchenko, it's going to be tough sledding for him with some of the fan base. I think if he ends up becoming like a 2C though, it's going to be hard to complain too much, but that's only if Booyum isn't a superstar, because Booyum does have that high level, because offensive defensemen, like, they're just fun to watch, right? Like, who doesn't love an offensive defenseman? Shane Gostisbehere. But watching those guys is a blast, and they make headlines in this league. Now, the next guy you have on the list here is, we've already talked about him a couple times. I think he's going to be coming up a lot in the next few years, and that's Jack Nesbitt. And Nesbitt, I think, is the hardest one to swallow right now, because it's just so many people just thought that was a reach of a pick. Yeah. It really brought down the entire draft party we were at. Like,
yeah, I've heard the stories.
The vibes were so good, and then they got so bad. I mean, they're still pretty fun, like, don't get me wrong, but ultimately people were bummed about it. And you look at some of the names on the board that went after him. You have Carter Bear, you have Braden Coots, you have Victor Eklund, just Cole Reshny. Like, there's some good names.
Sean Aitchison, there were guys. Yeah.
Kashawn Aitchison, that's who Ryan Quigley, who I did Fly Purpley with, was really hoping for, was Kashawn Aitchison there. And people were bummed about it. I know a lot of people were hoping for Eklund too, which we need center. Like, I do like having another high-end winger in there, but like, the team does need some centers of size at some point.
Yeah, this was very clearly a number one. They really like him. Number two, this was a need pick. They made it clear after the draft that after they picked Martone at 6, they were like, we need to come out of the first round with a center. We have to. This is a center draft. We need to have a center. And they liked Nesbitt better than any of the other centers. They liked him better than Coots. They liked him better than Reshny. They were probably the 2 other guys who, would have been plausible options to trade off for if they were dead set on taking a center. But yeah, this is a pick too, where if Victor Eklund is an 80-point NHL player, even on the wing, going to be like, well, you needed high-end talent, and instead you got a big, slow 3C. Like, in the early teens, you basically turn 2 first-round picks into this guy. Yeah, that's going to be a point of contention. But again, this is still in the middle of it. We don't know what these guys are going to become. Right now, we're just basing this on, the public scouting lists and what they've done at lower levels, what all these guys have done at lower levels. Maybe in 5 years, the Flyers will be proven right, that they were right to take Luchenko over Booyum, that they were right to take Bonk over Perreault, that they were right to take Nesbitt because he's a stud. This is something where I get the criticism, I do, and I expressed some of this criticism, particularly with the Luchenko over Booyum pick. But I do think you have to say it's still a wait and see to a degree, because we don't know. Like, the Flyers are betting on their guys. We'll see if they're right.
When you get outside of the top 10, really outside of the top like 7 or 8, these are all gambles at this point. Like, we don't really know that any of these guys are going to be studs. Like, I feel very confident about Martone. I even feel confident that Hagens is going to have a solid NHL career, which we'll debate that in a second. But when you get into the teens, that's where you're like, I don't know, like it's hard to get too upset because there's such unknowns. Like you feel good about like maybe you've assessed, you've watched some tape, you've read a lot of the prospect write-ups on guys, but we don't know. We're not going to know for years if most of these guys are good.
It's true. So before we continue on with the reasons for pessimism, we have to take our final commercial break. So first, I want to tell you about an old favorite here at PHLY, Shady Rays. I know it's getting close to the end of the summer, but that sun ain't going away. So you know that moment, the one where you realize you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or at a gas station 3 states away. I've been there too. It's a bad feeling. But then I found Shady Rays that changed the game. These sunglasses are made for real life, seriously good looking, polarized, durable, not stupidly expensive. And here's the wild part. If you lose or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now I actually wear my sunglasses without fear on hikes, at concerts, on the boat, wherever. Shady Rays is the eyewear that has your back. And we've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades, rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Now I want to tell you about our friends at Bet365 because whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365, just like it's never ordinary being a Philadelphia Flyers fan. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, live streams 780,000 events each year. They have early payout offers across the NBA and NHL because Bet365 pioneered live in-game betting. And today, they offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And I got breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $200 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY360, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Steve, we're now going back to the pessimism. Before we move to the next one, though, I do want to discuss the Martone over Hagens pick. Now, this is not a pick that I think is getting a ton of criticism around in Flyers fan circles. I think generally speaking, everybody likes Martone. He was in that top tier and he's got an awesome skill set, was a great junior player. Now he's going to college. I think there is a hope that he can be a legitimate star, but they did need a center. And James Hagens, who this time last year was viewed as the slam dunk number 1 overall pick, was sitting right there. This was an opportunity for them to fill that, lack of stars at premium positions. They could have checked that box. Been like, okay, we can sell James Hagens as a potential 1C down the road. And they passed on it. I do worry that could be something down the road. Not because I think Martone is going to be a bust. Martone very well could be awesome. But if they're both awesome, then you're going to have people be like, you probably should have taken the center.
If they're both awesome and the Flyers still don't have an answer at 1C.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big thing. And again, I'll even take an effective 1C, like somebody who is just like a good 2-way player between two of your stud wingers that you'll probably have. But if you don't have that, if you're still struggling for that, and Hagens is up there in Boston crushing it, that's going to be tough to watch because, you had a guy there who had dropped for whatever reason. We spent the weeks leading up to that trying to figure out why Hagens dropped. And the more you heard about it, the more you were like, oh, the Flyers actually could get him at 6. And this is going to be a debate for years. People are going to watch him very carefully throughout his career.
Yeah, and I think, too, like, really what this all boils down to at its core is you're playing the what-if game in your head. And people, I think, are generally feeling good about the Flyers' pipeline, about their potential future. But you're like, okay, how much better would I feel if the Flyers' top 4 prospects were Zeev Buium, Gabe Perreault, James Hagens, and Victor Eklund, as opposed to the top prospects being Porter Martone, Jack Nesbitt, Jet Luchenko, and Oliver Bach. Like, I'm not going to lie. I would be feeling better about the Flyers' future. As much as I love Martone, I'd be feeling better about the Flyers' future if I'm staring at Zeev Bouillon about to become an NHL player, if I'm staring at Gabe Perreault and being like, he was one of the best scorers in college hockey, if I have James Hagans to be like, yeah, there's their future 1C. I'm not going to lie. I would be feeling better right now if that was their pipeline.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just you actually like really cope your way into a lot of these picks just for what I was talking about before. It's like, well, they're my guys now. I got to support them. But like you do cope your way into rationalize your way into a lot of these. And yeah, I don't like that they didn't choose the high end talent. I'm trying to believe in this front office and believe that their scouts know more than me, that their scouts know something about the fit on these guys like long term or something. But it's tough. These are legitimate criticisms. These are things to worry about with this team. And it's, I think, a very valid reason to be pessimistic.
Yeah, I would agree. So we're coming up on nearing the end of the show, but we have a few more. So kind of do these a little bit more rapid fire.
I think, yeah, we can rapid fire these.
Yeah,
we got them.
Number 4 is more of just like the unknown, but given the way that they're building this team, they are going to need to execute on free agency and execute on trades because they're not tanking. They're going to need to get guys to come to Philly. And the question is, can they do that? Can they actually convince guys to come to Philly? It's, we've talked about it all the time. It's not a low tax environment. It's not at a beach. It's not in a super sunny, desirable area. Can they, if Connor McDavid's available, is there any world where they could convince him to come to Philly over anywhere else? Can the Flyers become a destination again? And I think that's an unknown. It's an unknown.
I got a solution to this. To this. You got to hire Jeff Carter as the ambassador. Okay. Do whatever you can to make up with Jeff Carter. Cause I heard he's still going to Sea Isle. I hear he's still hanging out down the shore. So you get Jeff Carter in there and he goes, he can do the pitch. He can be like, listen, the nightlife is great, right? Old City's a great time.
They enjoyed it. They certainly
enjoyed it. And then you got the beach is only an hour away. It's not far. Sure. It's just right there. They got that little South Jersey community right there. And when you win, it's the best. When you lose, not so much. But just win, baby. So I think that's where I would put my former Flyer alumni money into, is getting Jeff Carter to hype up the environment here and do whatever you have to make up with him. But there are reasons to come here. It's a major media market. When the Flyers are big, they still get national games. Like they get national games when they stink, which they got a couple against the Sabres here. I don't understand that at all, but whatever. But they still are a nationally recognized franchise. They're one of the more recognizable NHL franchises throughout the world. Between Gritty, the Broad Street Bullies, like people know who the Flyers are. It's a recognizable crest. So I think they can. It's an uphill battle though, because the fan base is tough, because it's not the glitz and glamour of New York. It's not on the beach. It's not tax-free, all that stuff. But I think they can. And I think the rising salary cap's going to help that one a lot. Yeah.
It's one of those things where I see people theorizing that like, well, yeah, the Flyers keep saying they want to be players in free agency, but are we really sure that free agents are going to want to come to Philly? I think the Flyers have some legitimate things in their favor. Number one, they got an owner with big pockets. They have great facilities. Number two, they treat their players well, and they're clearly making more of an emphasis upon that in the Dan Hilferty era. So I think there are reasons, but I do think it's also fair to worry that they will always lose out to the locales with more glitzy things to sell.
I think the biggest thing for me, Matvei Michkov has to be your number one ambassador. If Michkov crushes it, if Mishkov's a legit star, he can LeBron guys into coming over here and wanting to play with him.
Yeah, particularly Russians. You would think that if Michkov becomes the best Russian, other Russian players are going to want to play with Matvei Michkov.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So we talked about former Flyers.
Former Flyer factor. The former Flyer factor. This is just something that is going to be a thing that people complain about until the team gets good. It's going to be the idea of like, well, basically this entire team is now being run by former Flyers. They hired the former Flyer coach. They have a former Flyer GM. They have a former Flyer president of hockey operations. A bunch of the development people are former Flyers. Like this is a former Flyer front office operation now. And I think that there is legitimate skepticism that like, are all these people really the best people for the job, or do they have the job just because they played for the team? We shall see, but it's something that you do hear a lot.
It's a concern. They do it to the point of like absurdity. Like other franchises do this. Nobody does it like the Flyers. The Flyers have far and away the most alumni. It's almost every position. It's alumni. It's the kids of alumni. They're out there. It's one of those things that it's just the Flyer way, unfortunately. And we're hoping that because my biggest hope is because these are guys that have played the game more recently, these guys who have played the modern game and aren't like 70-year-olds, like they can actually grasp what's needed to win in modern hockey. That's my favorite thing about Briere as GM. He's a small, speedy guy who has played the modern game and succeeded at the modern game. So he understands a lot of it. He's a smart guy. I'm hoping that just smart guys, that no other smart guys that are feeling confident in bringing them in and not just bringing their buddies in to get a paycheck.
Yeah. And we'll see, it is very possible that the guys running the show are the best guys for the job, but I do get why there is a like, oh God, it's another former Flyer. Like, are these the only people they hire? I get it. And it's going to remain a criticism until the team turns the corner and gets good. And then you could be like, no, they have the job because they're good at their jobs. And there is stone cold evidence they're good at their jobs in the form of a team that is competing for Stanley Cups.
Exactly.
All right. Next up, there is concerns, I think, reasonable concerns about some of the contracts they have on the books. The Sean Couturier contract, it's already an overpay, and he ain't getting any younger. He's under contract for quite a while longer. Travis Konecny, I don't think is a bad contract now, but there's concerns about how he might age and whether he does fit the timeline in the sense of like, is he going to be providing surplus value to the team when they're actually trying to contend for titles by signing him to an 8-year deal to the deal they signed him to? Have they created a future albatross? Then you got the Owen Tippett contract, where looked like it would have been a good deal. After last year, there's probably some concern over like, wait, why'd you sign that guy to an 8-year deal? So I do think that there are some deals on the books that you look at and you're like, that could be ugly, particularly the Couturier deal. I think that's the big one.
Couturier is the big one by far. The injury concerns, the speed concerns. He was never a fast player, and he's just getting slower at this point. So it's like, you're concerned about that. You're paying a player $7+ million to be a like third, fourth line center at some point. That sucks. That's no good at all. Sanheim's also a concern. I mean, I really think he's playing a high level. I think he's easily a top defenseman on this team right now, but he's making $6.25 million until 2029, 2030. So that's still quite a few more years. And if he drops off at some point, that could be a rough one. I'm not as concerned by that one. I'm not overly concerned by Konecny until I see his play drop off, right? Okay. Like right now, I think he's playing some of the best hockey of his life. I think he's firmly in his prime, but talk to me in like 3 years about that one. I could be real concerned. Tippett is such an interesting one because I don't hate the cap hit or the term that much, but he's so frustrating because you just want more out of Owen Tippett. You just want Owen Tippett to play like he does at his best. You want him to play like the Blue Jackets game when he put up 4 points and single-handedly brought the team back. Like every time he plays against Dallas Stars, he plays like a superstar. Like, he's got it in him, but you don't see him put it together. So there is a concern that like, have we already seen the best of this guy? I hope not.
Yeah, I'm with you. There are definitely concerns around Owen Tippett. We've got one more thing to talk about pessimism-wise, more of a general overarching thing. But before we do that, we're headed to overtime. So head over to allphly.com to keep watching. This one is really more of just an overarching thing. It's Briere in the front office. And it really just boils down to, we don't know if they can do this. The path that they have chosen to go, the non-tanking, rebuild competitively type of strategy, it can be done. It has been executed by other teams, but it's also failed a lot. And it's reasonable, I think, to note that like, if you're taking a leap of faith to assume that Danny Briere is a good enough general manager to execute this the way it has to be executed. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying that we don't know if he can do it because he's never done it before. And that will remain a point of skepticism until they do it.
Yeah, and I think it's valid. I have a lot of faith in Briere right now. I think he's been smart for the most part. I like a lot of his trades.
I agree.
he's a first-time GM. It's hard to put a lot of faith in a guy without a track record. I actually like that he's a first-time. Like, I like having some fresh blood, like somebody who has not just been the same retread across the league. But that can be a huge point of concern for someone. And I understand, like, if you look at that draft record in particular, and you look at Bouillon, you look at Perot, you look at Nesbitt, like, I understand having skepticism based on those moves. I also understand some skepticism based on Cutter Gauthier, because we still don't know the full story there. And it's super frustrating for the fan base as a whole, because we just want to know, especially when Gauthier comes out and goes like, well, if only they knew. Well, just tell us, bud.
Just tell us,
we'd love to know. Just tell us. But some people, I've seen the takes where people will blame Briere and Jones for how they handled that. We don't know. And we only really have the account of Briere and Jones saying he wouldn't talk to us. He wouldn't take our calls. He pretty much just blacked us out. So you only have one side, but to some people that's suspicious, and they think that they're maybe lying about this and they screwed up somehow. I mean, it is hard to see a top of the line draft pick decide he doesn't want to play here no matter what and get traded for, I think, another risky top of the line draft pick. I mean, Drysdale, we like a lot of his talent, but he hasn't put it together fully yet. This is a pivotal season for him. But much like we're going to be watching Luchenko and Bouillon, like we're going to be watching Martone and Higgins, people will watch Drysdale and Gauthier.
Yeah, I agree. And again, when I say pessimism, I'm not saying that this thing is destined to fail. I'm just saying that there are reasons, as there were reasons yesterday when myself and Anthony Gargano talked about all the optimism. There's reasons to worry. There's reasons to be skeptical. And hopefully in 2-3 years, we'll be laughing at these things. We'll be like, remember when we thought that Steve Bouillon was the guy they should have taken when Jet Luchenko is competing for Selkies every year? That will be an awesome conversation if that's the way it ultimately plays out.
This is a fan base that's been burned enough that, like, there's always valid reason for pessimism, because we've seen every horrible thing happen since they won those Stanley Cups in the 70s. So, like, we get it if you're pessimistic. Like, it makes sense. And these are all valid reasons, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so, too. So now we're going to go to the Super Chats before we close out the show. I think we have a few. First one from Marcanoli, 117. If this all fails, it's because of Bill's sins. Yes. Blame it on Bill Matz.
Repent, Bill Matz. Repent.
He's on vacation, but you can still blame it on him. His presence lingers over the show, so it's all Bill's fault if the Flyers stink. Absolutely, Mark.
Poor Bill.
Next up, Jeff Fruscione, 6214. It's pessimism day, Jen, so I'll put the over-under on goals from Owen Tippett at 23. What are you taking? Also, Steve is right on Higgins if he turns out to be Braden Point, and Martone needs to become Mikko Rantanen. Fair. All right, Steve, over-under Owen Tippett, 23 goals.
God, because it's pessimism day and because he burnt me last year, I'm going to take him at the under. I want him to prove me real wrong here, bud. Owen, prove me real wrong here. Last year, me and Ryan Gilbert on BSH did a preseason gambling show. And there was one it was Michkov and Tippett to get a combined 60 goals last season. And I told people to take it. And Michkov almost fulfilled his end of the bargain, but Tippett did not.
Very much so.
And Tippett had a bummer of a year. I am going to take the under, but I actually don't believe it. This is more of a challenge to Owen Tippett here. I think he's going to do it, but like, I don't have faith in him right now because he burnt me last season. As I said, he's the most frustrating player on this team by a mile.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm going to go over just because it's hard for me to imagine a guy with that much raw talent having 2 consecutive years where he doesn't score over 23 goals. Like, I'm not even necessarily expecting him to like have the breakout year, but I feel like he's going to get to like 25, 26, right? Like he has to with that shot, with that speed. I'm going to go over because I just can't envision a world where he's that underwhelming from a goal scoring standpoint again. But hey, it's possible.
It's possible. I'm also hoping that having, a guy like Dvorak in the mix will help solidify the centers a little bit more. And, it just feels like they have to be a little better than last year in a lot of those regards. But I guess we'll see.
I guess we shall see. So thank you, Jeff, for the $20 super chat. Much appreciate it. And then I think this is our last one. Another Jeff Fruscione super chat. This is $10, so $30 from Jeff. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
No one wants to tank as a matter of policy, but as AG said yesterday, a great team requires elite talent. High picks are key. This team is borderline playoffs at best, so a poor record can have upside. If they're bad this upcoming year, it might not be the worst thing for their future, but I can tell you the Flyers don't want to be bad. Like they are aiming organizationally to take a step forward this year, not necessarily make the playoffs, but at least be in the mix. They will be very disappointed if they are real bad again, even if getting a top 5 pick would help this team's pipeline and maybe get them another star level player.
We're also talking about tanking. I don't know if you're going to out-tank the 2 worst teams in the league. The Sharks and the Blackhawks have cornered the market on tanking. They are bad hockey teams, and they're doing a great job of being the worst of the worst. So I don't know that you're going to out-bad those teams. Nashville did come close last year, even though they tried last year. They signed Stamkos and everything. It did not work out. But
the accidental tank, you got to love it.
You got to love it. But
and they just end up with Brady Martin anyway. Good job.
Yeah,
guys.
exactly. Great job. I was so happy. My happiest moment of the draft was when they took Brady Martin. But I just don't know if you're going to out-tank the 2 worst teams. Chicago got Bedard, who was supposed to be the next McDavid, and they're already screwing him up. So, tank? I don't know, man. I think if you're getting those top 5 picks, and they've gotten a couple of them, again, Michkov should have been a top-of-the-line pick, and they lucked in there. I don't know. I think you got a couple of the guys already with Michkov and Martone. The center's really the big thing that I'd love to bring it all home. I don't know what the solution is. The tanking, I don't know that it necessarily works because, again, look at it took the Oilers forever, and look at the Florida Panthers. The Florida Panthers' biggest acquisition, well, Barkov obviously was, a huge one.
Yeah,
but Tkachuk was
Barkov and Ekblad. Yeah,
Tkachuk was a savvy trade. Tkachuk was what helped put them over the top, and he was a savvy trade of another high-end player they had. So this stuff can be done. You just need a smart GM.
Exactly. And that goes back to that last thing of possible pessimism. Do you trust Daniel Briere? And that's really what it boils down to. Do you trust him? Guess we'll see. We got one more from Purple Crayon. Owen Tippett, 33-goal season incoming. Well, Owen Tippett is a large man, and we definitely know from Purple Crayon's love for Roger McQueen that he has a bias towards tall hockey players. So I'm not surprised, Purple Crayon, that you are an Owen Tippett supporter.
I would love a 33-goal season from Owen Tippett. That would be, I think, because it'd be a pleasure to watch. Because when he scores goals, they're pretty damn goals. They're great. They are not ugly John LeClaire, Wayne Simmons, like crease crashers. They are pretty goals. So 33 goals would be fantastic.
It sure would. Well, Steve, thanks so much for coming on the show today. You've been doing a lot of work for us over this past month, filling in for both me and Bill when we've been on vacations. So thanks so much. Big August. But that is all the time we have today for you all on the PHLY Flyers podcast. Please like the show. If you haven't, don't see those like numbers on StreamYard, but just boost them up from wherever they are. Keep on boosting them. And if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.
We all silly like the mayor.